whether it is healthcare, powering our homes. During months of crisis, pandemics, commodity price shocks, climate-related disasters, government intervention becomes essential. In such instances, public spending is not just a cost, it becomes a stabilizer and a growth enabler. Yet, borrowing alone cannot and must not carry the weight of our development ambitions. We must be bold and innovative in rethinking how we generate revenue. The traditional tax base is narrowing, and public intolerance, and I repeat, public intolerance for additional taxation is very limited. The solution lies in enhancing non-tax revenue collection. This requires the structural orientation of our ministries, departments, and SAGAs from passive recipients of allocation of national resources to active, accountable revenue generators. Non-tax measures such as fees, charges, and levies that deterrent state assets can significantly ease the pressure on the exchequer if managed transparently and efficiently. But this also demands for digitization, regular valuation of public assets, and adoption of robust financial management systems. Our aim should be to build self-financing institutions, and this can be really been demonstrated by the growth you've seen in our appropriations in aid, tripling in the last 5 years through the digitization of issuance of government programs. In parallel, we must deepen our engagement with public-private partnerships as a financing model for infrastructure. PPPs, when structured, offer a sustainable path to unlock private sector efficiency innovation without overburdening public finances. But this only works where there is transparency, equitable risk sharing, and sound legal framework. To this end, the PPP Directorate, now to be turned into a State Department, must implement a robust PPP disclosure framework, ensuring that project documents and updates are made accessible throughout the project lifecycle. This transparency is non-negotiable. It safeguards public interest and builds investor confidence. Our institutions must be prepared to evaluate and budget PPPs without rigorous procurement processes, cost-benefit analysis, and long-term performance contracts. We risk replicating the very inefficiencies we seek to avoid. PPPs must be governed not just by contracts, but by the principles of public accountability and value for money. For PPPs remain the future of financing, especially our long-term infrastructure projects. But as such, without accountability, cost-benefit analysis, and proper consultation, then they might end up being the same thing we're trying to avoid, projects that overburden Kenyans and do not bring the full value for money. Another vital pillar of our journey towards economic transformation is financial integrity. As you may know, fellow accountants, on April 16, 2025, the National Assembly passed the Anti-Money Laundering and Combating of Terrorism Financing Laws Amendment Bill, which introduced critical reforms to enhance Kenya's compliance with the national standards. Among other changes, the amendments empowered professional regulatory bodies, including this institute, ISPAC, to play a role in monitoring and enforcing anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism standards. Honorable fellow accountants, this is a key law that was passed this year. It was returned by His Excellency the President to Parliament for reconsideration, but it's very important that you brace yourself on the additional roles that has been given to the Institute through for the fight against anti-money laundering and financial terrorism. And why is this important? If you remember, last year but one, the Financial Task Force took our country from, grey-listed our country. Grey-listing of our country means that we are at least making efforts towards making laws and implementing them to combat anti-money laundering and purification of funds and anti-terrorism. However, those laws are not sufficient. That's why we are grey-listed. So these laws are important now to move from grey list to white list. And this means that if we do not do this, our global finance movements, when you do a swift transfer to another country, or when you're seeking financing for your venture businesses or for non-profit entities, then there will be much more scrutiny. And that's why these laws are very important, because we not just operate in isolation, but we operate in a global financial space. So the global economic implications are clear that a strong AML-CFT framework enhances investor confidence, improves access to international capital markets, and reducing borrowing costs. In today's global financial system, integrity is not just a legal requirement, it is an economic asset. Finally, the Finance Bill of 2025 was tabled before the National Assembly 2 or 3 weeks ago. It offers a pragmatic, principle-based response to our physical challenges. We are faced with limited scope for new taxes, but this bill is proposing to focus on streamlining tax incentives, simplifying tax laws, and enhancing compliance. It looks itself into aligning with our national tax policy and medium-term revenue strategy, and seeks to reduce inefficiencies and promote fairness. VAT's rating has been proposed to be now limited strictly to exports, and exemptions is proposed to be narrowed to essential and processed goods. Deductions under the Income Tax Act is proposed to be tightly linked to actual income generating activities. These are not arbitrary adjustments. They are necessary to align our tax regime with economic logic and national best practices. Incentives that resource market or reward inactivity must or should be phased out. Our tax policy must be guided by efficiency, equity, and transparency. Only then can we foster a business environment that is fair, competitive, and conclusive to appreciate again the role that ISPAC has played and accountants across the country has played in enhancing our laws, especially matters related to finance. Public participation on the Finance Bill of 2025 and the budget estimates for 2025 have started this week. Meetings are held in Nairobi. I was speaking with the chairman and saying that they want to appear next week, because the whole of this week you're here. We'll have, when I go back today, we realign ourselves to that. And we'll also be calling out public participation across 9 counties in the Republic of Kenya. However, fellow accountants, I have always said the emphasis is always on the revenue side. The most unpopular bill in the country becomes a finance bill. Yet at the same time, there is an estimate that is discussed at the same time. Public participation on these two. I've been watching the online debate, for example. The only issues raised on the budget has been on the examination, the money for exams that have not been captured in the budget. But that's just a drop in the ocean of a 4.3 trillion shillings budget. So I urge all Kenyans, the same way you scrutinize the finance bill and the revenue side of raising money to finance that budget. Let us be robust as such to look at the budget estimates and point out areas that can lead of wastages and areas that we can cut costs. You know, last year, even December, when you're doing the four pieces of law, the Tax Amendment Bill, the Tax Procedures Amendment Bill, and the Business Amendment Bill, we received approximately 1,800 written views from members of the public. At the same time, when we're doing the supplementary budget and you're doing the main budget, the total views from the public were less than 200. You can tell where the energies are. And if we leverage on that energy, we can achieve a balance of this country that is balanced and eliminate budgeted corruption, and make sure we have a budget that serves the whole of the Republic of Kenya. Distinguished fellow accountants, what lies ahead is not a question of policy imagination, but political goodwill, institutional discipline, and strategic execution. We have the tools, we have the framework. What we now need is collective resolve. Let us recognize that economic transformation cannot be decreed, it must be built. It must be earned through sound governance, credible institutions, and the careful balancing of fiscal responsibility. Fellow accountants, I would like to bring to your attention some of the bills that are before the Committee of Finance and National Planning for your input and consideration. At the same time, when we're doing the estimates and the finance bill, We'll also be carrying out public participation on Virtual Asset Services Bill. Our chief guest today, in 2018, when I was first elected in my first term as a member of parliament, I did raise a question at the floor of the House on how prepared Kenya was on matters of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. And I remember the response from the then governor of Central Bank, who answered that that is a passing cloud. That is 2018. But I'm happy that 7 years later, what was said to be a passing cloud, we have eventually realized it is here with us to stay. Between July of 2023 and July of 2024, $3.3 billion was exchanged across different platforms on virtual assets. That tells you that this space will soon overtake mobile money transfers and bank transfers. So with a space that remains completely unregulated, it is a big risk for us. But it's also a great opportunity for us, because in the whole of Africa, only Nigeria and South Africa, and I think Ghana, have enacted laws that recognize virtual assets as part of their infrastructure. And therefore, we have a Silicon Valley moment. If you become the third country to pass good legislation on virtual assets, we will see the best of the Binance and all those other great virtual asset institutions globally come and set base in Kenya as a gateway to operate in Africa. I look forward to the first stable coin being issued in this country, and perhaps that could be the solution to reduce the dollarization of our Kenyan economy. We have the public audit bill that was passed by a committee sponsored by yours truly, that's now before the Senate. And key take home here is it reduces the time between when you're required to submit your financial statements at the end of the year to the Auditor General, so that it gives the Auditor General sufficient time to look at our financial statements. Thirdly, we have the public procurement and disposal amendment bill that I sponsored, that's also before the Senate, that among other reasons seeks now to provide fiduciary responsibility to the accounting officer of the entity. Because all these errors of commission and omission that are done whether in our procurement system or our payment system, very few of the PFM Act limits the responsibility to the accounting officer. Now this puts specific penalties to the accounting officer responsible. Most importantly, the Public Procurement Disposal Act, also bill now before the Senate, provides now the legal guideline to migrate from cash to accrual accounting. And I don't need to overstate the importance of cash to accrual accounting to fellow accountants seated here with us today. As we reflect on the responsibility we bear as accountants, auditors, regulators, public servants, let us not forget that integrity is not a slogan, it is a baseline, it is our core capital. And yes, sometimes the path to reform feels like reconciling a cash book in a storm. But we persist, because we know that in a country of 50 million citizens, only a handful are trained to ask, is that figure supported by documentation? And those are the people we are addressing here today. Let us move forward, resolute, principled, and leading, because if anyone can bring order to fiscal chaos, audit to ambiguity, and logic to legislation, it is this accounting fraternity. And remember, while the economy may not always balance, our ledgers must. And if not, well, then it's time for another note, or perhaps a note to self. I thank you. In a special way, I would like to recognize the presence of our PS at the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Madam Aurelio. A round of applause for Madam PS. I think you'll have a chance later to address the congregation. Lastly, fellow accountants, FCPS, and hopefully ISPAC, EFCPN Mengoja. It's my humble duty to request that we all be upstanding and welcome our chief guest today, the enigma of politics, the Pan-African, the intelligent, selfless, resilient, tenacious leader that you've ever had, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga.
He has led Kenya's democratic transformation for over 50 years as founder of ODM, Prime Minister and African Union envoy, stabilizing the nation, driving political reforms and championing continent-wide infrastructure and peace initiatives. With his unwavering commitment to justice, unity and inclusive progress, his visionary leadership promises to guide Kenya and Africa toward a brighter, more prosperous future. Please welcome former Prime Minister of Kenya, Right Honorable Raila Odinga.
Thank you. There can be no former because there's no current. And therefore, it's just a Prime Minister. He is the second Prime Minister and remains the second Prime Minister. But let me first begin by Philip Kakai, Mheshimiwa Kimani Kuria, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, hamjambo. Hamjambo tena. Yes, I don't know why I was invited to come, but I've been invited all the same. And I'm very happy to be here again to talk to the accountants, because I know that accounts is a very important function in business. Some of you may have read Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. Mwalimu Nyerere translated in Swahili. It's called Mbepari wa Venisi. Now, Mbepari wa Venisi, the only problem was that he did not take account of interest, because he loaned someone money, that is Mr. Shylock, but he did not put interest into the contract. So when the person who had been lent money defaulted in payment, he demanded that he should now be given the security, which was a pound of flesh. But then now he was told that, yes, you said you take a pound of flesh, but never did you say that there will be a blood. The blood will not spill. So he'll say, you take your 1 pound of flesh, but there's no blood. In other words, he did not put interest in the contract. That is how he failed. And that is what teaches us about accountancy. So I'm very happy to be here this morning to talk to you. And if I take too long, tell me to stop. I'm honored to join you for the 42nd annual seminar of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, and particularly to speak to you on the subject of economic transformation. Allow me first to congratulate the leadership of this institution, both for this prestigious seminar and the invaluable role this organization continues to play in the development of our country. ISPAC has been at the forefront of pushing for the highest standards of financial integrity and professionalism within the accounting sector. It also continues to be a pivotal voice on the pressing issues confronting our nation. This includes advocating for good governance and fostering accountability in both public and private sectors. You tasked me to speak on the subject of navigating the winds towards the achievement of Vision 2030 and economic transformation. In the interest of time, I wish to go straight to the subject. I am passionate and nostalgic about Vision 2030. You are all aware that the vision had its origins in the National Rainbow Government, but got formalized in the Grand Coalition Government, where I was the Prime Minister. Following the post-election violence of 2007-2008, Vision 2030 came at a time of uncertainty and doubt in the country. It restored hope, created stability, and jump-started the economy. I believe that if we were able to pull the country out of the rubble and heal the wounds of ethnic animosity that had burnt down sections of the land back then, we can do it again. Kenya has grappled with economic transformation its entire life. Vision 2030 is our most recent coherent and long-term attempt for transformation. I have been out of government since 2013. Even now, I'm not in government. My views here are therefore those of an observer watching from the sidelines as successive regimes have grappled with economic transformation. These are my observations on what has been achieved, what is holding us back, and what more needs to be done. We have made significant progress in many spheres. Our banking, services, and hospitality sectors remain very competitive. We have heavy investment in infrastructure and connectivity. Our uptake of technology is admirable. Our investment in geothermal, hydro, wind, and solar has made us leaders in renewable energy in Africa. But that is like a blind man among the deaf, among the blind. Despite the progress, Kenya still faces many existential challenges. These include massive unemployment, rising cost of living, inflation, debt, income inequality, climate change, and ethnic charged toxic politics, among others. How we deal with these issues today will determine our future growth and stability or otherwise. The instability and prospects and protests we witnessed last year indicate that we do not have the luxury of time to create a country and an economy that works for everyone. Kenya must put intentional and adequate emphasis on growth, growing the size of the cake. Today, every Kenyan is fighting for a bigger slice and an increasingly very small cake. We have been obsessed with splitting the cake we inherited and not with baking a bigger cake and creating new opportunities. This mindset has put us in a situation where one person's gain is another person's loss. A sure recipe for endless bickering and instability. A complete mindset shift is long overdue. Growing the size of the cake takes deliberate hard work, not half measures and business as usual. I was the Minister of Roads when we made the decision to turn thicker road into a superhighway and build the bypasses around our major towns. At that time, I became a very unpopular person when I came up with trying to decongest the traffic in the center of Nairobi. Oh, Raila is jealous of our progress. He wants to make us as poor as his own people. That's why he's doing that. We demolished structures which were on the road reserves, and thick highway was constructed. And the bypasses of Nairobi were constructed. You've seen the Dongokundu bypass here in Mombasa. You've seen the Eldoret bypass, the Kisumu bypass, the Nakuru bypass that they have not constructed, but they were all designed under my watch as Minister for Roads. There was hue and cry, threats, insults, and court cases. Today we enjoy the fruits of that difficult decision. We need intentional actions to make Kenya a natural hub for multinational business in Africa. This is what Singapore did. It is what China did. It is a tested way for growing an economy and creating jobs. To this end, state-of-the-art infrastructure is a must. Excellent roads, air, rail, and sea linkages. With the growth mindset, we will appreciate that we have to upgrade all our airports and highways, or build new ones. We have outgrown the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. It may have been a state-of-the-art facility when it opened in the 1970s. It no longer is. Nairobi-Mombasa Highway can no longer competitively serve this country. And we have many other institutions that were state-of-the-art decades back, but require to be upgraded. We need a deliberate, export-led industrialization policy. We can't transform our economy by importing everything, including needles and toothpastes. You don't have to venture straight into the big and the complex. Singapore began its industrialization journey with factories producing items like matches, fish hooks, and mosquito coils to satisfy the most basic needs. This is what gave way to the strong clusters in higher valued added electronics, petrochemicals, components, and precision engineering by the late 70s and early 80s. The ongoing efforts by the government to develop industrial parks and special economic zones should therefore be encouraged and upscaled. We should then go all out to attract global multinational corporations to these parks as vehicles for industrial growth. To grow the size of the cake, we have to adopt a low and transparent tax regime and back it with a clean, lean, and efficient bureaucracy, a strong regulatory and legal framework, and a clean and green growth trajectory. Then we inject into the mix a fair and transparent judiciary. In the journey for economic transformation, so many things end up in court. A country stagnates and loses opportunities when its judiciary is corrupt, opaque, and incompetent. You have to produce and deploy world-class manpower. This is sometimes require that we integrate foreign and homegrown talent and being intentional in the sharing of skills and best practices. Once you have the human capital, you must pursue a rigorous application or meritocracy in its deployment. Meritocracy simply requires that we let the best person do the job if we want the results. Economic transformation therefore dictates that we embrace a zero tolerance for nepotism, complacency, corruption, and tribalism in all sectors of our economy. Education is critical to sustainable economic transformation. We therefore have to invest in uncompromising standards for a universally accessible, top-class public education system, the attention on provision of technical skills relevant to industrialization. Kenyans should never have to turn to heavily commercial private schools to access quality education. And this is what China did. China spent time trying to impart knowledge on its youth. And so that by the time they liberalized the economy, China became a very attractive investment destination because they had a huge population of young people who are skilled and cheap. So the manufacturing facilities in the West saw a big opportunity in China. That's why they all migrated to China. If you take the automobile industry, for example, you take Mercedes, BMW, VW, Volvo, Ford, Nissan, Toyota, Hyundai, they're all in China. You're telling me in Germany that, look, it is cheaper to manufacture Mercedes-Benz in China and ship it back to Germany than the one manufactured in Stuttgart. See, that is how China managed. And within 30 years, China developed the biggest middle class in the world, 500 million people from poverty to middle class. That's what it is. But China is no longer the cheapest destination because people have become more affluent. There's a gap underneath there which is opening, which countries like Kenya and so on can fill. There's the gap that Africa must move to fill. And we must never imagine that we can grow an economy in the middle of chaos and violence. Many nations are stagnated despite massive deposits of oil, gold, and other precious minerals, vast fertile virgin land because of social disintegration. Many nations of their professionals like you scattered in all corners of the world because of social cohesion failed. We must invest in building social cohesion out of the ethnic, racial, religious, political, and all other diversities that exist in our country. Many times, we think that economic transformation is just about sound policies. It takes much more than economic policies to transform an economy. Any policy can be reversed. Incentive for growth can be cancelled unilaterally. We need to invest in building institutions that can stand for the country and safeguard its broad vision no matter the regime. Reversal and abrupt discontinuation of policies thrive on the absence of rule of law, chaotic and amorphous governance structures, and prevalence of corruption. The fight against corruption must be our national constant. Growth can sometimes lead to income inequality. We must therefore constantly attempt to widen the social security safety net. This can partially address signs of unrest in a population struggling with the highest cost of living and lack of job. The government will have to strike a fine balance between being fiscally prudent and expanding welfare schemes. Ladies and gentlemen, We have a beautiful and uniquely situated country. If you position Kenya as the continent's leading financial and diplomatic center, ensure its competitiveness as a logistics and manufacturing, shipping and aviation hub, and keep it as a regional headquarters for global multinationals, the country's long-term outlook will remain very bright in the decades ahead, and transformation will be a given. I want to give you an example. I was a minister for roads and public works. Before that, I was minister for energy. Then I became the prime minister, supervising and coordinating all activities of the government. And at that time that we came up with the Vision 2030. And we say that we can transform our country from a backward third world economy to a middle income economy by the year 2030. And then we came up with what we call flagship projects that will help to propel us in that direction. Some of these you can see. SGR from Nairobi to from Mombasa to Nairobi. You've seen the Lamu Port, LAPSSET, Lamu Port, South Sudan, and the Ethiopia Transit Corridor. We came up with Konza City, ICT City. We came up with tourist cities which have not been constructed: Mombasa, Lamu, Isiolo, Lake Turkana. The special economic zones, Mombasa, Lamu, and Kisumu, plus Nairobi. All those were projects which are to propel us to the attainment of Vision 2030. We had said we needed to have a properly disciplined and highly trained manpower, which is a prerequisite for that kind of development. So when we started, we did achieve. When we first came into government in 1963, we found almost an empty coffers. This is 2003. The government was depending on IMF and World Bank. And when the Paris Club closed on the government, there was literally nothing. So when we came in, we had made a promise to introduce a free primary education. And the president then insisted we must introduce free primary education. But money was not there. We found the government was raising very little money out of taxes. It is not the issue of introducing taxation, different all forms of taxes. It does not help if it is leaking. You can have so many taxes introduced. You punish the population, but there's very little out of it. So we addressed this issue. And when we addressed it, we had insufficient funds. So later on, a friend of mine, the former president of Tanzania, Mr. Magufuli, when I went to attend his inauguration ceremony, he asked me to remain behind. After he had met with all the heads of states. Then when we met, he told me, look, Raila, me and you have been ministers of roads. And I know how to run ministries. But me, I have never been a president. You have been a prime minister. you know how to run a government. I want you to advise me how to manage my government. I spent 3 days with my friend, Dave Magufuli. We talked about many other things, but simply put, see, it boils down to just two things: income and expenditure. Full stop. The rest are details. Here, you need to look at what are your sources of income. You must have proper income, and most of them are through taxation. And this is where accountants now come in. You have got people, there's income tax, there's customs, there's VAT, all the forms of income. And then expenditure. So we found that there were leakages first in terms of income. The government was supposed to be collecting taxes, but very little of those taxes were getting into government coffers. Most of it was going to the pockets of officers. So you created a lot of ticks in between, which were basically taking most of this. See, you found that the revenue officers were the boys in town. They're the ones who are buying apartment blocks in town. The ones who are driving the latest models of cars in town. The ones who are building castles in the villages. The ones who are building high-rise buildings in village markets. So if you do a lifestyle audit, you can nab all of them. This is what we did. And we fired a number of them, retained those who are retainable. Then all of a sudden, the income begin to rise. On the other side is expenditure. Each and every ministry had a revenue, had a procurement officer seconded from the treasury. And these were accountants, procurement officers. There was a requirement under the Nyayo that any procurement above 100,000 shillings had to be done competitively. In other words, you had to advertise in at least 3 newspapers, and there must be at least 3 companies bidding, and then you select the lowest. We found out that each and every procurement officer had 3 companies registered in his or her name. So that, and then there's now collusion. It's known that the procurement officer in education supplies health. The one on health supplies agriculture. And agriculture supplies transport, and so on and so forth. Whenever there is any kind of a tender, in one ministry, only one fellow would tender. 3 companies all belonging to one person. And you pick the lowest. An item that is supposed to cost 100,000 shillings is bought at 1 million shillings. Then this is now shared among them. So government was procuring very expensively. There was no value for money. First, revenue is not coming, very little is coming, unless that comes, it's also wasted on this other side. When we plugged both these sides, the revenue side, the revenue went up. And then procurement side we also dealt with. Then the cost of procurement also went down, and there was also quality. When I was Minister for Roads and Public Works, I found when tarmacking of a standard 1 kilometer road, 5.5 meters in width, was an average of 55 million shillings per kilometer. 55 million shillings per kilometer. I sat down with my engineers because at that time the cost of constructing a road per kilometer in Uganda was cheaper than in Kenya. As why should a construction be cheaper in Uganda as Uganda is getting raw materials from Kenya? Bitumen and all these things are coming from Kenya to Uganda. It does not make sense. So we sat down and came out. There's a quantity surveyor, there's a civil engineer, we had even an architect, with all these officers. And I told him, convince me as an engineer why this should happen. And we went to the quantities. We managed to reduce the cost from 55 million shillings per kilometer to 25 per kilometer. And we introduced a new gauge, 6 meters instead of 5.5. And better quality, we were able to do it. From 55 million to 25 million, we reduced. So we therefore, within a very short period of time, we had sufficient revenue. 95% of our development budget was being domestically financed. We only relying on 5% from donors. And everybody who was there know how much infrastructure we were able to develop at that time. It's not rocket science. So it's not a question of adding more taxes. You add more taxes until now the people cannot pay it. You are milking the cow until no blood is coming. There's no more milk. But what you do is, what you are collecting, look at where it is leaking and plug those loopholes. Then you have sufficient funds for development. This is what would happen in Australia. This is an advice that I'm giving to the government. Now that I'm here, and Mheshimiwa just talks, I can be allowed to say something about the CDF. This is an issue, it's a burning issue. We created devolution, a devolved structure of government, because we found that a unitary system of government was very inefficient. And there was also regional imbalances in development. That's why we created devolution. But so many people did not want to hear about devolution. And we said, you create devolution, you will bring units down. There's a national government and a county government. These county governments are supposed to do certain things which are provided for in the Constitution. But before that, before the devolution, we had introduced CDF because the national government was distributing resources in a very discriminatory manner. That's why we introduced CDF. But CDF ideally should now, in the devolved system, there's no need for a CDF. CDF should be the responsibility of the county government. Members of parliament are supposed to do 3 things: representation, legislation, and oversight. They should oversight the national government. How do we oversight the national government when you yourself are also implementing projects? Construct roads. Now they're doing what is so-called public participation, asking the public. But I just want to tell them, do all the public participation you want. Ultimately, you must go to a referendum. In the referendum, you will lose. It does not happen in another country. It's not that we don't want bursaries. Yes, bursaries should be there, but bursaries should be distributed by the county government, not by members of parliament, not by MCAs. This is very important. It's very critical in terms of division of responsibilities to government. You have got legislature, you have got judiciary, you have got executive. It's very important. And if this happens, you will see that a lot of development will take place in the counties. I'm not defending the governors. Those who are corrupt should face the law. Those who are corrupt should face the law. But it is not, does not make any sense when a president goes to launch a road in a constituency and the contractor is the member of parliament from the next constituency. The contractor. It does not make any sense at all. So this is what is happening here is primitive. We need to discard it, and we need to allow the CDF money and all that road maintenance funds to go to the county government so that the county government can be able to discharge their constitutional duties. This is a point I wanted to make. I know I'm not deviated from my subject. But generally, let me say that accountants do a very important role in governance. And what you guys are doing is commendable because you're trying to set up standards for accounting officers in the country, which is really required so that the country can be able to develop in a much more faster way. We have one country only, and this country we must protect and defend. Kenya has real potential, but Kenya has lagged behind because of policies which have been followed in the past. In 1963, as we attained independence, Kenya's economy was equivalent to that of South Korea. Kenya, Ghana, and South Korea were at the same comparable state of economic development. Now, 62 years later, things have changed. In 1963, the levels of industrialization, the GDP, the per capita income, the levels of literacy, the levels of health service provision and so on were comparable, Kenya and South Korea. Now, today, South Korea's economy is 45 times bigger than that of Kenya. You need to ask yourself, what did the Koreans did right that Kenya got wrong? If you answer that question, then you are on the way to answering the Kenyan's problem. And I'm sure the answer is known, what we need to do. We just have to wake up and start doing it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, just I wanted you to, will you take some few questions? Thank you very much, members. Thank you very much, our Honorable Prime Minister. You may take your seats. Our Prime Minister has agreed to take a few questions, but I will also call upon the Honorable CPA Kimani Kuria on stage. At least 2 questions to each of them. So maybe you'll get some writing material for the Honorable Prime Minister. So each venue, we could take 2 questions, plus Mwakazi, the online virtual attendees will also give us some 2 questions. I want to take it to Pridin 2. Let's have some questions from Pridin 2. Pridin 2, some 2 questions.
Yes, we are here. Just a minute.
Yes, proceed, FCPA.
First question. Yes, here. to the microphone here to Professor Nicholas Letting.
Thank you. My question, thank you so much, the Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Kimani Kuria. My question goes to Honorable Kimani Kuria. What budget allocation have you made for professional accountants for their subscriptions to be paid for by maybe the government this financial year, the coming financial year? Because there is, we noticed that there's been some decision to change. As our member there, is it possible for us, for you to assist us to get some consideration? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Letting. Second question from FCP Rastas Kwaka.
I on?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. My question goes to Honorable CPA Kimani Kuria. We missed at our point here what you are saying about the VAT special table. It's a thorn in our flesh. It is killing business. It is killing revenue to the government of Kenya. What did you say? Please, if you could kindly clarify.
Chairman, as we wind up Friday 2, allow me to post this to Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga. NGCDF is 2.5% of the national government budget. So as we grapple with the public debt in this country, I would post this to Prime Minister just for appreciation. If our national budget was 2 trillion, 2.5% will go to CDF. If it is 3 trillion, it means the number goes up. Is there a correlation between our current public debt challenge and inability of National Assembly to rein on public debt because of the benefit that constituencies get from the NGCDF allocation? And that speaks to the key point spoken about. I submit and over to you, CPA Kakai.
Thank you very much, FCPA. I take note that it's council members who've raised questions. Let's go to ordinary members. I give 2 positions again. Please, pride in 2. Let's have the ordinary members ask questions. So, 2 questions. Proceed.
Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is CPA Deko Mohammed, the normal son. I want to ask Jacob Baba, the Enigma. You say that you have donated specialists to the government, but you are not seeing any change. We still have the same problem. We're almost 1 year down the line. So are your specialists not helping the economy in building towards the nations? My second question is for Honorable Kuria Kimani. Yesterday I have seen a report that the verification committee for the pending bills have voided some of the SMEs, and which might be that they are legally done the tender, but they have been removed from the system. So how can that be compensated in that they have already given the service, and now we are saying that they are not true? Thank you.
Second question, preferably from a lady. Gender balance.
We have a lady who has a question. The only man raising hands, Chair.
Let's then go to Pride 1.
Okay, thank you so much, Chairman, for that opportunity. Thank you so much, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, for that session. So this is Pride 2. CPA Deko, you ran from Mars. We still know you are here. Yeah, so 2 questions from here. We have one from CPA Dr. Wawero, and the other one I'm hoping a lady will raise up the hand. So please stand up, mention your name and where you come from.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jack Wawero. I'm a member of Research and Development Committee. I have 2 issues to invite Honorable CPA Kimani Kuria to react. One of the issues is the issue of raised on economic transformation by Right Honorable Raila Odinga. On the issues of research and development, we have our researchers airing views on development, citing CDF. It is illogical for any researcher to research on an illogical issue. So I'm requesting Honorable Kimani Kuria, when he is in Parliament, to ensure that illogical issues do not arise, such as the MPs doing the work of the executive, such that we as accountants cannot research on the same. Number two.
Make it one, please, because we need enough questions from other people, please.
More adding to the same, he mentioned on the issue of loans. Our 11 trillion loan carries 60% of our revenue. But Hon Kimani indicated that loans are neither good or bad. I want to put it to us or to him also to invite him to give a solution on the issue, the fact that the 60% is too high on environment, global environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Awero.
Another question, Vice, from there, prefer from a lady.
Okay, thank you. So as we get a question from CPA Dorothy, I just want to say that the mandate of the Institute, among others, is to conduct research in the area of finance and accounting, and some of those areas belong to us. So we'll really be very bold on that, and we want to collaborate so that we well advise the government. Thank you. CPA Dorothy.
Thank you so much. My question goes to the Right Honorable Prime Minister. I think he did a really good presentation. My question is about the donor funding. We've seen that most donors are now pulling out of funding the Africa and even Kenya, and it's really affecting us in terms of service delivery. How can we deal with this issue? And also, as much as we talk about donor funding, it's not really, as we've noted that it is not really donor funding as such, it's more of a loan, and we have to repay. I don't know what you think about the wording of the word donor funding, because I feel like it's really misleading to most of us. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, CPA Dorothy. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you, thank you. I think we've dealt with the Pride-in 1, Pride-in 2. I would allow them to respond to these questions. Then we pick Sarova and the virtual audience. So I'll allow the Honorable Kimani Kuria CPA to, you can respond while you are actually seated, or you can come here. Either way.
Thank you very much, FCPA, and thank you, fellow accountants, for your very good questions. The first question was asked on how much budgetary allocation has been done to subscription for different professions. I do not have a straight answer to this question for this reason. Every entity has their own vote, and therefore there is no one single vote that is run on the budget that you can go and say this is a vote for professional subscriptions. And therefore, the correct information would be analysis of each of the government entities and how much each of those government entities has allocated in terms of professional fees. I know he's in CASNEB Foundation, and the question is how much has CASNEB, for example, allocated for the CASNEB staff for their subscriptions. If you go to the Parliamentary Service Commission, then you'll have to check that under that each of those budget votes. On the issue of the VAT special table, I did recognize that this has was been brought to my attention and that of my committee, that the issue of VAT special table is a key concern of especially most SMEs and MSMEs. And as the entity that oversees Kenya Revenue Authority, I have committed to make sure that we'll have a good discourse with Kenya Revenue Authority and with yourselves so that we come up with an amicable solution for the issue of special table under VAT. On the verification committee on pending bills, again, there is an ongoing process, again, headed by FCPA Edward Ouko on the same. And the complexity of pending bills, for example, is, first of all, is brought about by lack of fiscal discipline. Any pending bill, according to our PFM Act, should form the first charge in the following budget. But is that done? The answer is no. Secondly, the politically instigated expenditures, especially towards the end of the financial year, but most risky is the one at the end of an election cycle. So, for example, our county governments, when towards the tail end of their term, that's when there is all the tenders being issued out, and some of these works is very difficult to verify whether they actually happen. But what are the policy interventions? And I'm speaking this not as an implementer, but as a policy maker. The policy interventions we've made is, I did mention in my address, like I did sponsor a PFM amendment bill that is now going to make it mandatory to migrate from cash to accrual accounting. So this therefore means there's not going to be need to do pending bills verification, because every expense will be treated at the time of expenditure and not necessarily at the time of payment as it is on cash accounting system. Secondly, I did say that I did sponsor a public procurement disposable amendment bill that's before the Senate that now puts responsibility, individual responsibility to the accounting officer to make sure that there is adherence to the rule of law, and therefore, for example, the first charge of those particular pending bills. The question of loans that you talk about, I strongly believe in the golden policy rule that borrowing is neither good nor bad. What matters is, what do you borrow to do? Most of us here have survived on loans. A mortgage is a good thing. But if you take a mortgage to buy a car for your own use, is that prudent use of that mortgage? If you take an advance to go out for drinks or to take someone out, is that prudent use of their salary advance? So what matters is not just what we are borrowing, but what are we borrowing for? And I did say, as long as that borrowing is for development expenditure and is within debt sustainability, then we cannot say that we're borrowing badly. And I did say actually that ratings such as Moody's rating has given our debt sustainability a clean bill of health by moving it from negative to positive January of this year. What are the alternatives and what are the solutions you're providing? We did enact a law through my committee 2 years ago on the Privatization Act, for example, which unfortunately was declared unconstitutional. And you're back to the drawing board saying some of these entities that do not have to be run by government, let them be run by private sector. So we're back to the drawing board to find out how best we have a law that makes sure that, I totally believe that government is a bad businessman. Government is across the world, governments are bad business people. So can we let the private sector do the business and the public sector do what they actually need to do? And I think the way to doing that is making sure we have a robust, very transparent and very effective public PPP law and also privatization law. The question of the thorn in the flesh, the question of NGCDF and the role of members of National Assembly. You know, of course, I'll be very conflicted in answering this particular question. But in terms of the legal architecture, as per the NGCDF Act of 2015, is that communities in the constituencies, whether we want them constituencies or counties, elect what we call CDF committee members, or who are quote-unquote implementing officers. The accounting officer for that particular fund at the sub-county level is a fund manager who is forwarded by the NGCDF board and National Treasury. The payments that are made for any particular expenditures on that account are made by the district accountant, who is an employee of the National Treasury. However, of course, members of parliament being the politicians we are, people, when they're electing us, they want us to be accountable. We want projects. And therefore, when a school is done in my constituency, through NGCDF, through National Government Constituent Development Fund, I will go to launch it. The same way, an electricity program that is done under the Ministry of Energy through REREC, I will go to launch. And this also is part of the oversight to see, has that project been done effectively? However, maybe the fund, if our counties could be, I don't know, I don't want to call maturity or to say where they should be in terms of oversight, in terms of proper use of funds could be where they are. Maybe then they could be best implementing these particular entities. But they say, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, if you go to across the counties, 25%, 385 billion shillings, for example, is sent to counties as equitable share. But what projects do you see around our counties? What expenditures go towards our counties? And maybe what we might want to do is not necessarily disregard NGCDF, but borrow the NGCDF model to how counties do their budgets. Because you find out of the total allocation for NGCDF, only 4% goes on administration. The entire 96% must go to visible projects on the ground. Do we see the same thing in counties? Maybe it's a question of efficiency and not just comparing what NGCDF is and what county governments do, but making sure that we have an efficient system that brings development to the bottom of the pyramid, to the people of the Republic of Kenya. If we do that, it wouldn't matter whether it's been done by NGCDF or by county government or national government, because they are all taxpayers' money and they need to go to the ground so that we get value for the taxpayers' money that we collect from the painful taxes that we pay. I thank you.
Well, there are three questions which were asked. One is about national government CDF. It is pointed out that the CDF is about 2.5% of the total budget, which is goes to the counties or goes to the constituencies. But yes, 2.5% is substantial because it will increase the allocation going to the counties from minimum 15% to 17.5%. As you know that we said we wanted more money to go to the counties than is there. We said minimum 15%, but now that's where they have been stuck. If more money goes down there, a lot of more services can be provided. You see, such services like road construction. We still have a structure that is retained. We have retained the old unitary system structure. I was a minister for roads, and I'm the one who introduced these road agencies, which is KENHA, KURA, and KERA. Because of that time, we saw there was too much bureaucracy. The accounting officer was only the PS of roads. He was the one who was holding the authority to encourage expenditure. And therefore, work around the country was moving in a very, very staggered and very slow pace. So we decided to create an agency outside the bureaucracy. And this we did with the support of the World Bank and IMF. And we created KENHA for the national highways and international highways and trunk roads. Then KURA for urban roads and KERA for rural roads. But with the devolved system of government, you don't need KURA and KERA. Those services can be done by the county governments. There's no reason why KURA in Nairobi should be having roads here in Mombasa. There are several roads in Mombasa. Nearly over 50% of roads in Mombasa here are not under the county government of Mombasa. They cannot do anything about them. People are making noise to the governor. but the governor cannot do anything because those roads belong to Kura in Nairobi. Kera, Kenya rural roads, has roads in Nairobi. Many roads in Nairobi do not belong to the county government of Nairobi. People are making noise to the governor, but the governor cannot do anything because they don't even have funds to do those roads. I will say that these roads should come under the county government and funding should be given to the county government to do those roads. The same thing with the rural roads in the need there. Only Kenya should remain under the national government. Then service provision will be more efficient. The other question was about donors. That donors are pulling back or pulling out. What to do? What's the way out? Yes, surely donors, we don't need donors. We need basically investors, investment and trade. That's all that we need. We need investment and trade. Many countries have been saddled with expensive debts which they cannot pay. The interest rate itself is too high when you take that loan. And it continues to impoverish many poor countries. So the route is to investment, create a conducive environment that will be able to attract investors to come. We have a country that with a lot of potential. If you create an enabling environment, many investors will come to do those projects for which we are now going out to the national market to borrow funding to fund. That is, we will not be needing that. We will be needing trade. In other words, have access to external markets so that you can be able to take your goods to those markets. Let them open the market to you to trade, and then invite them to come and invest in your country. This is what we need. So I'm not worried about the donors pulling out at all. The other question that you asked is about ODM in government. ODM donated experts to government. But you know, it was just July last year. We are now in May. They have not done any budget. The first budget is going to be done this year. Mr. Mbadi's Minister for Finance, his budget will be read in Parliament this year, next month in June. So judge, give him time. It's not like instant coffee that you brew and drink at the same time. It takes time. So give them time and you will see a difference. Let somebody come out with his budget and you see. You see, for example, that this housing loan, this housing levy people are paying, is going to be converted into an investment so that you do, if you don't get a house, you can be entitled to a refund in the future. So please give ODM time to show you how we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You are tempting the Prime Minister to convert this into a political rally. So thank you very much. We want to close with a round of questions now from Sarova Whitemans, and then we go virtually. So Sarova, you can. Oh, you have a mic already. Proceed. One question, please.
Be ready for the bills that are coming up. As a Kenyan, I get so worried. Reason being that we have enough legislation. but still corruption thrives. So my question is, why do we still have corruption, particularly in the public sector? Is it a question of a weak link between the enforcement of the law or a breakdown in our morals? And tied to it, then therefore, is I pose this question. Do you believe laws alone can change our behavior without the conscience of our morals? Because you cannot legislate morality. And then now, the role of Chapter 6 in supporting that process. Is it just a question where we are ticking boxes or we are making it practical? Thank you. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you. Next. No, it can't be on that row. We also have this other side.
Thank you, Chair. I'm CPA Esther.
Okay.
And my question to is Mheshimiwa Kimani. And it's on the issue of public participation. As the chair of Finance Committee, currently we are having the finance bill. Do you take considerations into the suggestions that are done by the different stakeholders? Or is it just a formality, just to conform with the Constitution of Kenya? And just a suggestion, why not, after the public participation, why not have sessions for feedback so that the different stakeholders are not only engaged during public participation and they have to wait for the other cycle for yet another public participation exercise? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our discretion. Let's have some questions from the far end. Yes, there's a hand there. A gentleman, very far. I don't know. You can give him a mic on the far end. Mwakazi, you can be organizing the ones on virtual.
Yes, ready.
My name is CPA Samuel Simiu. I'm a track sergeant. So my simple request is this. Can Honorable Kimani, the MP for Molo, request the commissioner, because we are living in a data-driven economy. How much tax has the commissioner collected from the special table? He brings you that information. We want to see how is it helping. How much tax have we collected from putting people on the special table?
Okay, the last one here. This will be for Sarova. The last one here. Here. The guy standing.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, proceed.
This is CPA Ongeta, and my question is to Honorable Kimani. One, I want you to understand the role of MPs in fighting corruption, because as we look at all the things in the theme of this budget about collecting money and having many people in the fold, I think the biggest leakage we have is on corruption. And we haven't seen really very good measures from Parliament. And I would agree with Baba that I thought Parliament should be oversighted, but the same Parliament has resources that they are using. So the fight on corruption, if it is only left to EACC, then a bigger component of this, which is Parliament, is not doing their role, and that's why we have a lot of corruption around. Whereas if we collect so much and still we have those leakages, we are not going anywhere as a country. So the role of Parliament in fighting corruption, because that is where the link is weak. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Still take this one.
Yeah, let him come.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter Ndongo, CPA Peter Ndongo. I do think that this issue of special table, maybe we should have had it as a topic. I would like to ask the MP from Molo, Honorable Kimani Kuria, CPA, do we have standard questions, audit trails, audit questions that the officers at the special table should ask, or do they just generate them according to what they think. I've had clients there, and it is really, really difficult to know what to anticipate. Is it at the mercy of that officer? And the second one is to ISPAC. How do we go ahead to make sure that this issue is moved forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mwakazi. Two questions from virtual attendance. I think we are closing. And Honorable Kimani, you can come and handle. They are all yours. Baba has no questions.
So 2 questions from the virtual.
Just two from
Two
the
questions from the
very
virtual.
quickly.
We have Ombai John. He's asking, why don't we live within our means? It seems that we always have huge budget estimates, and yet we know that resource envelopes are so limited. Final question. What are you doing to avoid a recurrent of the last year's unrest about financial bill, given that this year's budget is even higher than last year? Over to you.
Thank you. Quite a number of questions there. I will start with the last question. What happened last year during the finance bill was, I think, we are all caught off guard. And one of the things that led to where we got there was a lot of misinformation and disinformation. And disinformation, I say, because it was very deliberate. People mentioning things that were not necessarily there. And in the way we communicate to the members of the public, we were late. By the time we were trying to catch up with the members of the public on the procedures, then we had lost the discussion. We corrected that because around 80% of what was contained in the finance bill came back in November through 4 different laws. The tax amendment bill, the tax procedures amendment bill, the business rules amendment bill, and the business laws amendment bill. And one thing that it is at National Treasury to do is, can you have an explainer first to what this bill is doing? Because unfortunately, lawmaking across the globe is so technical that when you go to the bill, it says deletion of clause 54 of the VAT Act. So you therefore have to go to the parent act of the VAT Act and see what their deletion is. Sometimes when you go to that VAT Act, that deletion is a deletion. And therefore, by the time you're understanding what that amendment means, then it gets lost. And therefore, what we did in December and what we've done this time around, and it was published in all the papers this week, is doing an explainer. What exactly is this amendment doing? Is public participation an exercise in futility? First of all, my grandmother one day asked me, and my grandma is completely literate, hii vitu ulitoa wapi? Because the thing is that finance bill started last year. Unfortunately, what most people don't understand, finance bill has always been there, even before the new constitution. That's when the budget will go to read the budget at the House and announce there will be increase of this, an increase of that. So it has always been there. So I dare say that at least since I've been chair of Public Finance and National Planning Committee, we have ensured that there is publicity on these particular discussions. And that's why things like the finance bill has become a national conversation across the whole country. Do we take the views of the public seriously? I dare say, out of all the bills that have been referred to my committee, you will find a lot of input from members of the public. And a good example, I'm forgetting them, the FCPA who asked the question about VAT refunds. He's the one who gave the proposal when you're doing the tax procedures amendment bill of reverse invoicing. That was not there in the bill in the first place. And it was a brilliant idea. KRA did not necessarily agree with us at that particular stage, but we made it alone. So public participation is not an exercise in futility. And I will say as a chairperson, and I'll speak on behalf of my members, we approach public participation with an open mind, ready to listen to the best ideas. However, as you may know, there are competing priorities. These people want the law to go like this, others want a law to go like this. An example, if there's an imposition of a levy on imported goods, and you have the same meetings, 2 stakeholders, one is a manufacturer of that product, and another one is an importer. You would automatically expect that the importer of that product will not support an excise duty on importation or a levy on imported products. But the manufacturer would want that levy because it's going to give that manufacturer a competitive advantage. And that is why I will say you cannot guarantee that it has to go in a particular way. Then it has to balance with the interest. And this time around, we told National Treasury, and we're going to make sure we try the best we can to make sure that the report we do aligns with the medium-term revenue strategy and our national tax policy. Will everyone be happy? The answer is no. As I demonstrated, any particular measure that you put may advantage some particular sectors and disadvantage other particular sectors. On the role of members of parliament in fighting corruption, I would say one of the biggest, as Baba said, roles of members of parliament is oversight. And oversighting that is making sure that the books of accounts are presented to the audit committees, and as the department committees scrutinize the budgets and the report of their MDAs. I think that's where the role of parliament is. But on matters of corruption, in a country where there is competition for resources and competition for opportunities, there will definitely be an attempt every time to try to get a shortcut. The calls that I get even here when you go out, like, Mheshimiwa, kuna kazi niliapply mahali, unaweza nisukumia. Kuna tenda niliona mahali, unaona kama unaweza nisaidia. And unfortunately, that is because in a job where there is an accountant is needed, and the qualification is 5 years experience and CPAK and a bachelor's degree, and there are 1,000 applications out of 10 positions, you would naturally expect some people trying to find other ways to make sure they are part of the 10. And maybe that is what we are calling corruption. So fighting corruption is a communal responsibility. I dare say, even in our families, there is corruption. When you go for Christmas and at home and you go in a big car, you get special attention. And maybe even the boozy at home is not slaughtered until you get there. And the best meat is reserved for you. And if you did not go with and the ladies, you are the ones, if you go dressed nicely and you have a good job and a good car, you are the one to make salad. But the ones that does not appear to be doing very well is told to go and wash matumbo. Unfortunately, that is how our society is. So we must continuously change laws. I give an example of the space of bitcoins and cryptocurrencies and all those virtual assets. It is an emerging technology, something that was not there many years ago. So we must make laws to go with the emerging technologies. And if you don't that, and even this loophole that continuously come, we must make continuous laws. And that is why Parliament sits, to make laws, to represent, and to oversight. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, Right Honorable Molo Odinga. Thank you very much, our Honorable CPA Kimani Kuria, Member of Parliament for Molo Constituency and Chair of the Finance and National Planning Committee of the National Assembly. Tuwape makofi. Let's give them a round of applause. Again. Thank you very much. I want us to go into a very small session before we close. CEO and your team, let's, like it has been our tradition, get us some gifts for the Honorable CPA Kimani Kuria. The next stage would be, of course, to honor the Prime Minister, and then later on, we should be able to have council here, and then, of course, with our PS, Dr. Neely, and then we should be able to take a photo, national anthem, and close the session. Plus our former chairs, if they are here, we would want them to be ahead here.
Wow, there you go. Makofi tafadhali. Thank you so much. Asante sana. Wow, makofi tafadhali. Asante sana. There you go. There you go. Asante sana. Wow.
So council members who are here, Dr. Ndindi, elected, council members, past chairmen, our colleagues from the professional bodies from East Africa, please come on board.
That memorable photo, asante sana. In the meantime, quick announcement. Vipingo Smart City at 3 p.m. If you're interested to go visit the site, the bus, the transportation, the vehicle will be ready at 3 p.m. And we'll have a number on the screen for that. But in the meantime, we celebrate our guests, Asanteni Sana, for coming. Immediately after this, we'll have the Kenya National Anthem. Makofi out of Adali, thank you so much indeed. And after the National Anthem, we'll have our lunch. We'll be guided Asante Sana. In the meantime, I'd kindly request that we be upstanding for the Kenya National Anthem. I request that we remain standing as we allow.
Thank you very much. Let's allow our dignitaries to leave, and then we should be able to go for lunch. Sorry, we mixed up your break. Okay. A quick announcement here.
You know, this question about special table on VAT, help me think, let's think through the process together. If we can put an amendment on the Tax Procedures Act to specify exactly what you need to provide on that special table, so that it is on a legal framework and not at the discretion of a KRA officer, just as a suggestion. And that can be done in the current finance bill. Thank you.
Asante sana. Thank you so much. Pride in 1, Pride in 2, please be guided in terms of your lunch. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, we meet here at exactly 8:30 to kick off at 9.
Pride in 1. Pride in 1. Our lunch is served at Jambo Gardens.
As you exit, make sure that you have your lunch voucher. Maroon, we take our lunch at Baraza. Yellow, at the pavilion. Asanteni Sana, Vipingo Smart City, happening at 3 p.m. Transport will be offered.